Welcome into the Player's Perspective Uncensored. This is part 2 of our 3-part series where we break down the men's basketball team. Part 1 is up. Definitely go and listen to it. We talk about the guards. This is episode 2 where we talk about the big men, or the center rather. And we got a special guest in the podcast, man, a former teammate of mine, guy from the 05 Final Four. You heard him on the Diener show. You heard him on the radio. You heard him on TV. Got Perrin Johnson in the house. Pete, welcome to the podcast, Pete.
Hey, man, it's good to see you, man. How's everything? How's the family going?
Man, all is well, man. Everything's kosher, as they like to say, man. Everything's
Good to
kosher.
hear. Good to hear. Good to hear, man. Glad everything's going
How's
the
everything
right way.
with you, man?
Man, I can't complain, man. I'm blessed every day to be here. Just coaching kids and doing all the right things there. And, I never thought I'd get into coaching, but one guy told me one time, he said this the best. He said, you have too much knowledge to not be willing to pass it upon somebody else.
Smart man.
Because of that, I just really been trying to give away tools that have been given to me from great people before me and former teammates such as yourself and other people. So it's good stuff, man. Good stuff.
I can dig it. Man. Well, let's go ahead and dive into the topic at hand, man. So we're talking about the centers the University of Louisville has on their upcoming roster. We're talking about Sananda Fru. We're talking about Ali Khalifa. We're talking about Vangelis Zugris. 3 guys, you could throw Case and Pryor in there because I'm sure it's going to be points in time that he's going to be playing the 5, but we're going to leave him for the next episode in the forwards. We're going to categorize him as a forward. We're going to focus on these 3 guys, man. So let me ask you this. When you first heard about these guys and the signings and you kind of started to look into them, man, what was your thoughts on these guys?
First things first, their age. All of these guys are older. They're all 21, 22, Sanders 22, Ali's a redshirt freshman. He's 22, maybe turning 23. And then, obviously, Big Z's he's 21. So, the age is a factor primarily. Thirdly, all these guys grew up playing FIBA. And you played in Europe and you had a great, prolific career over there, played all over the country, all over the continent in Europe. The physicality is what's really going to be impressive for me because those guys don't mind contact. I think that's the main thing. They all grew up playing FIBA and they all became pros at a very young age. So they're very seasoned guys. And that's the first thing that really stands out to me the most because, as you know, like FIBA is a different game. It's a lot. They allow more contact more than anything than we will probably get to here in America. And this Big Z. And you played in the Greek league. So that's one of the most physical leagues in all of Europe. And you know that like tangibly because that's something you played in. So I don't have to speak to the physicality of that league itself.
I'll tell you what, man, I think you kind of hit it right on the head. The first thing that popped out to me was like, these are men. These are men coming to join this team. You're talking about Sananda Fru, 22. You're talking about Big Z, 21. You're talking about Ali Khalifa. It's been in school, it seems like, forever. But these guys specifically that are coming from Europe, these guys have played against grown men. Like you said, guys that typically leave college, that don't make it to the NBA, they go and play overseas in Europe. And they've played against men and have been successful playing against men. So, I expect them to step right in and be impactful and help right away. Like, I think, physically, if you look at Z, like his shoulders are so wide and so broad, and he plays how he looks. Big, physical, strong kid. I think Sananda Fru's probably overall the best big of the 3. I think he's well-rounded in a lot of areas, and I think Ali is probably the highest IQ of them all. So, you got 3 different big guys that we'll get into, man. We'll kind of talk about each one of them individually, but I just thought that you got 3 different flavors, kind of like the Napoleon ice cream, right? You got 3 different flavors that you can bring to the team. Each one sort of does a different thing. And so I'm eager to see, man, how Coach Kelsey, works that in, the personnel that he works and surrounds each one of these guys with, man. So I think it's really going to be great. But, my first thoughts when I first saw this roster, man, is like, these kids are going to step in and be ready to go right away.
No, absolutely. when you look at all three of these guys, they all bring something different to the table, and they all played in different parts of Europe. And when you play in different parts of Europe, you learn a different type of basketball. When you talk about Big Z and you mentioned him, he's 6'8". However, his frame being at 245 pounds speaks volumes for what he does and what he can be. I think physically, we'll see a lot of great things out of him. He's played at the senior level on a national team with Giannis for Greece, and they're always a great contender in the Euro basket over there in Europe. I think he does a terrific job of doing a lot of intangible things. Now, if you're going to ask him to go out there and score 20, he's probably not going to do that. But 6 points in Europe is kind of like 12 to 14 in America, in my opinion. You know how that goes because they don't play you in extended minute roles. So, if you're scoring 16 in Europe, it's like dropping 20. And that sounds crazy to say
Right.
to people, but like if you've ever been over in Europe, you're like, man, he's averaging 16 points a game. Oh, that guy's a bucket. You know that guy's a bucket. But for a guy his age at 21 to average 6 points and 4 rebounds, and he's played on two teams in the top division in Greece, I think that speaks volumes about how he's physically ready to play, and his game will only mature and develop as time goes upon. When you talk about Ali as well, I mean, like he's a redshirt senior. I think I'm really excited to see what he can do. And then Sonata, his field goal percentage is through the roof. It's absolutely crazy, like you mentioned when you mentioned all three guys. But I was like, wherever you want to take us, let's start with all of them, man. I'm a basketball nerd just like you, so I kind of get excited about things that people don't really care about or understand.
Well, since you started on Big Z, let's start there. And as you said, man, I've played in the Greek league before, and that is by far one of the top three most physical leagues that I've ever played in. And Greek ball is probably not as fast as the German, the French, or the Italian league, but they play sort of a slow, methodical, and very meticulous style of ball. They're going to set hard screens. They're going to roll to the basket. They're going to seal anything that involves physicality. They're going to bring it. And so, honestly, man, one of the main things that impressed me with Z was his motor. I mean, he has a motor. He has athleticism. He picks. He rolls to the basket. But the thing that really sticks out, man, was his ability to offensive rebounds and create extra possessions for these guys. Watching some of his highlights, watching some of him in practice and workouts, he brings a ton of energy to the guys each and every day. He's going to bring a level of energy and expectation that these guys are going to have to match each and every day. He's going to bring that physicality, and he's going to bring that toughness, man. I think he's a guy that you can throw in the game, go bang somebody, go foul somebody, get in there, mix it up, rough up some guys, and just like you said, get physical and kind of, muddy up the game a little bit. But he's also very, very skilled. When he gets the ball on the short roll, he's kind of got like a little short push shot, but I think he's going to blend right in. I think he's going to be that big factor of bringing that physicality and that presence to the team.
Well, I mean, you mentioned finishing and offensive rebounds. Anytime a guy is 6'8" and he shoots 65% from the field, that means a lot of stuff that he's doing is either in the paint or at the rim, which means he's always around the basket, which means he has a knack for finding the basketball, or as you hear coaches say, he has a nose for the basketball.
Right.
So, I mean, when you talk about those things right there, those are great things right there in itself. When you see 65% from the field, like that means, oh, you're always around the rim. You're always active, which means when he's going on a pick and roll, he's always rolling to the rim. And typically, if he does roll to the rim and he gets his hands on the ball, he's going to finish anytime you see a guy that shoots that high percentage. But for me, the real thing is like 6'8", 240 pounds. If I'm coming off a down screen, I'm coming off of his side, because I guarantee you he's going to get me open.
Right.
And then if you're 6'8", so let's just say he's in some aspects an undersized 4, maybe some might consider that. And now today's game, I know we play with Ellis, and Ellis is 6'7", and he played center for us when we were on the Final Four team. But in this situation, if he can play as a power forward and he's shooting 65% of the field, that means he's a leaper. He's getting off the ground and he's finishing over bigger people that are typically 6'11", 6'10", and even 7 foot in Europe. So that means he is comfortable with finishing oversized and playing against it, Larry. Because that field goal percentage is like, it's just crazy to me. I can't believe that a guy at 6'8" in the top Greek league is finishing that consistently anytime he touches the basketball. So if he's attempting a shot, you know it's more than likely going in every single time.
And before we transition to Sananda, my last point, which actually, encapsulates both of these European guys, is that one thing that European bigs know how to do is they know how to sprint on a roll. And I think that's something that American bigs really struggle with, because they screen and then they look at the ball, and man, European bigs, there's a big emphasis on setting a screen and sprinting to the basket. And and the reason that is because the faster you can sprint to the basket, because your man's going the opposite direction, right? He's got to stop the ball. So if he's going north and you're sprinting south, that's going to force somebody to cover you, especially if you got 4 deadly shooters like these guys have this year. Who are you going to leave? Who are you going to help off of? But if you're sprinting to the basket wide open, somebody's got to cover you. And now you find out who's helping you swing the ball. Now you create a long closeout. Now you got great offensive guys that can break you down, because more than anybody, the simplest things in basketball are yet the hardest things. The pick and roll, guarding the pick and roll, and closing out are the 2 most fundamental, basic things in basketball, yet are 2 of the hardest things to do. Because the pick and roll is going to create somebody having to help, especially when you have a physical big that's going to take out the guard, and the opposite big and the defending big has to help. Somebody's going to have to help on the roll guy, and now you're going to swing, and now you're into read and react basketball. So, that is one of the big things that I look to see with Sananda and Big Z this year, is them sprinting and rolling, because when you get guys on the outside that are knocking it down, guys are going to be hesitant to help, and now you're going to get guys wide under the basket, wide open dunks, hence Big Z shooting 60, 65, high percentages in the paint.
Well, you touched on it, Larry, and we're not talking the guards today, but when you have 3 to 4 guys that are that prolific at scoring the basketball on the perimeter, I mean, you got to really be grateful as a big guy, because it allows you to operate in the paint. Because now what this allows me to do is you can't help. And if you do, I'm going to kick it out, because I was taught that way. And that means you have to rotate. So now when you're rotating, what are you doing? You have to do what you just said. You have to create a hard closeout situation for an opportunity for a guy to either shoot the ball because somebody's late on a closeout, have somebody running at you and get the pump fake, get in the paint, get a paint touch and kick to the lane, or you can finish at the rim. And you'll see a lot of that with Mike Brown this year, because I think he's really great at that. I think the kid's a lottery pick. But I just think that when you got a guy like that rolling that hard every time with the spacing that he will have, it'll make him that much more effective coming to this game and not being afraid of the physicality that comes with American basketball, because it's nothing like the Greek league, like we mentioned before.
And speaking of rolling, now we got a 6'10", 6'11" guy, athletic, length, rolling to the basket, a big-time lob threat, which makes that sprint after the roll even that much more difficult to guard. You think about some of the old Kentucky teams with Anthony Davis and Jones. I can't think of his first name off the top of my head.
Terrence
Jones. Like, that was really the first team that I really seen take advantage of, like, getting in the paint. They didn't throw no shuffle passes. They didn't throw no bounce passes. Anytime you got in the paint, it was a lob threat. You just throw it up near the rim. Guys is going to get it. And like with these guys, man, I feel like that's going to be the case this year, because a guy like Sananda, who runs like a deer, you see him stretch out, he can catch, he has good hands, he finishes well around the basket. He averages almost 13 points a game in first league of Germany.
Yes.
Playing against men. Like, averaging 13 points in the German league, that's like averaging 18, 19 points in college. I know that we're in the transfer portal era and the college game has gotten back to having older guys, but like when you used to playing against men, it's going to be an easy transition for him. Now he's got to pick up the system of Coach Kelsey and how he wants to play and the pace that he wants to play at all the time.
Yes.
But, you're talking about a guy like Sananda who's going to fit right in and, take the place of the guys from last year who rolled and finished high at the basket, man, I see him fitting right in, man, and really excelling and taking this thing to the next level.
Well, you know, Sanada is like, you know, Sananda, when you talk about him, first things first, like we mentioned earlier, 22 years old. That's number one for me. So he's seasoned. Now, you mentioned another thing, pace. One of the things that I wish people could really see, I felt like when we were at practice, when we were in college, we got up and down the court and we really changed to the next segment very quickly. If you've ever seen Pat Kelsey practice, they change segments so fast. It's crazy for me. I love the pace that he moves at practice. So I really look for Sananda to really adjust to that quickly, hopefully. Like you mentioned earlier, great lob threat, great rim runner. What really stands out to me also as a young guy, 35 games for a number 3 seed in the German league. So they were a top 3 team in the German league, right? And then when you talk about those things, he played 33 out of 35 games. So he's durable. I think that matters to me as well. And when you really talk about it, 12.6 rebounds and 1.4 blocks a game, shooting 65% from the field. So this guy doesn't miss at the rim, but he rim runs great. He finishes at the rim. He's going to have a lot of great opportunities to do that this year, especially when you think about the shooting on the perimeter, which will allow him to really control and dominate the paint. I really look forward to paint touches for him. But more importantly, Larry, like it's just really fascinating that you can get a guy at this caliber and you can find a guy like that in the German league on a top 3 team in one of the best leagues in the world. I think that really stands out to me. And size for position, he's 6'11". I mean, he's solid. His frame is everything you want it to be. You throw him the ball, he catches it. He's not going to drop the ball. He has great hands, and I'm really looking forward to him because, like, you know, you could play him maybe at the 4 with Khalifa at the 5 because Khalifa can play on the perimeter with his shooting and passing prowess. So, like, there's a lot of things that Pat Kelsey and them can do. But, I mean, I just really look forward to this young man because anytime he gets it around the basket, he's always going to be able to finish. But more importantly, the maturity. You know, these guys don't have to worry about anything because, you know, we just talked about a 21-year-old guy fresh off, you know, playing in the Greek league, and another guy on a top 3 team in the German league that is very capable of doing a lot of things. But you know, when he's going to get the ball in the paint, Larry, he's not going to miss too many opportunities.
And another thing that I think that he adds value to that is a little bit better than Big Z is on the defensive end, right? With his length and being able to challenge shots at the rim and really protect the paint, guys coming in, especially on the pick and roll. Guys will try to get these guys in the pick and roll and try to get downhill. And I think just using his length and his athleticism, he'll be able to deter and to be able to change a lot of shots at the rim, you know. And so I think that's another big factor that'll play as well when he gets out there in that uniform.
Yeah, and here's one more thing I want to talk to you about with both of these guys we just mentioned. They grew up in FIBA. So they don't care about the physicality. So when you play against us, we will be willing to match the physicality and guard guys in the paint better than I could for a team that I can remember. I mean, in a long time. And I really size for position and physicality, 2 things that won't bother these guys. So if you got a post player going against us, good luck because I really think our physicality is going to be very special in the paint, and we're going to keep guys from scoring a great deal in the paint. That's something I'm really looking forward to, which people might not talk about or see on paper right away.
Now let's talk about the third guy in this bunch, Khalifa, a guy that's been here last year. He's been in PK system for a year. I was coming off a knee injury, came back toward the middle of last year. He was cleared to practice, got a chance to watch him play, kind of prepare last year's team as they was coming down the home stretch. And you talk about a guy that is one of the brightest minds, a guy that plays with a superior IQ, has a great assist to turnover ratio, but more importantly, man, is a willing passer and a great and creative passer. You know, we talk about Ellis Miles, guy that we played with, you know, was our best passer on our team. But Ali is a guy that sees the game 2 and 3 steps ahead of everybody else, and he makes the game easier for everybody else when he comes in, man. So a lot of anticipation, a lot of excitement for people to be able to finally see him out in the Yum Center on the floor, man, playing against opponent as well.
Well, I'll tell you this much. from two guys that played for one of the best to ever do it. Talk about changing your body. You know, when I came to campus, I was 189 pounds. 2 months after that, I was 213. You know, protein, 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 weight room, running, running, running. I don't have to tell you about it. We both know. We could tell stories for days about it. I've gained 10 pounds in a week and I've lost 10 pounds in a week. But this young man has done a tremendous job with changing his body. If you look at his body from what he looked like at BYU to now, he has tremendously dropped his body fat and turned his body into muscle. You know, Coach Pitino always stressed the gospel of us being under 10%. Obviously, that was never a problem for me or you. But I mean, you know, when you look at him now, his definition is unbelievable from when he got here to what he is now. I gotta really tip my hat to him, because when you're a guy that has to get your body fat down, we've seen several guys do that over the years. It is not an easy task. On top of going to practice, watching your diet and eating correctly to make sure you can be the best version of yourself. And when you have less body fat, it reduces the risk of injury, which is something that he's coming off of. So now that that's taken place, we will more than likely see him, one, play his senior year out and be on the court for a longer while because his body fat is so low and he's improved his body. You're talking about a guy that's 7 feet tall. He's 250 pounds, Larry, redshirt senior. So he's been through the wars. He's seen it all. As a kid from Egypt, went to Charlotte, went from Charlotte to BYU, and now he's at the great institution of the University of Louisville. So when you say all those things, Larry, I think that's really impressive of him is 315 assists one season to 142 turnovers. That is crazy for a big guy. That is crazy, Larry. We both know that. But more importantly, the other thing that I really find impressive is he was Conference USA Freshman of the Year. But this guy was top 6 in the country in centers and passing the basketball. And at one point, like I think his assist to turnover ratio was 3.6 to 1. Most guards don't have that, brother. Most guards don't have that. I don't know how many guys I played that had a 3 to 1. But like most guys, if you want to make the NBA draft, Coach Pitino used to always tell anybody, at the minimum, you got to have a 2 to 1 assist to turnover ratio as a guard. This guy as a center, Larry, is like 3.16 to 1. That is phenomenal. And with the guy that can pass the ball, with the guys on the perimeter with their shooting ability, if you go watch this guy's film on YouTube, he's like I know people are gonna hate me for this, but just to give people an idea, he passes it like Jokic out the high post, brother. Tell me I'm wrong. Have you seen? I know you've seen the highlights. I know you've seen the highlights. This guy is gonna have guys coming off a dribble handoff, a DHO, as you might hear, like dropping it to Mike Brown. Mike Brown's gonna create one of those da-na-na type of moments. I can't wait, because if that guy passes the ball to a Mike Brown, coming off, getting the paint touch, kicking it to the wing, man, we are going to be so dynamic with his playmaking ability, Larry, because he's surrounded by so many shooters. I need to stop talking and let you talk because I'm rambling now, but that's how excited I am about this guy to be in a Louisville uniform.
Now you preaching the gospel, man. First and foremost, I'm gonna correct you on one thing, because nothing about us had to be under 10%. Our coaching staff had to be under 10%. Big men had to be under 7%. Guards had to be under 4%. So
see, that was body fat was never a problem.
Body
for me,
fat,
so I never worried about it.
No,
I had to gain muscle.
Nothing double digits about our body fat. But when we talk about Allie, we kind of get back to that 3 flavors that we were talking about, the different ice cream, right? We've talked about Big Z, who was the physicality. We talked about Sananda, who was kind of like the overall athleticism, who brought more length, a little bit more defensiveness, more rim run, lob threat. Now you talk about Ali Khalifa, who is probably a little bit more of a finesser, more of a finesse side than the front 2 that we named. But you talk about a guy that's going to be in the high post and going to be making passes, and a willing passer. Man, nothing better for a shooter or for a scorer than somebody that is a willing passer and that is a really good passer. I think on the pick and roll situation, I think he's going to be a pick and pop type of guy. And so he's going to bring a different dynamic in that space, because not only can you not sag off of him while he's passing, but he's a threat because he can shoot the ball. You know, he shot 38% his last year at Charlotte. I think in BYU, he shot, low to mid 30s, but he's a guy that you're going to have to respect when he's out on that perimeter. And so now he's creating, mismatches. Are you going to switch? And now he's able to go down and take a guard in the post and draw a double team. And he's too good of a passer for you to double team. And now you're surrounded by all elite shooters. And so it's just a different dynamic that he can have an effect on the game, not even from a physicality standpoint, but just from a thinking and from a skill and just from a pure knowledge base of how to play the game. He can really dominate. And a lot of it may not even show up in the stat sheet, like you said. He may only have, 5 assists. He may have 6 or 7 points. But the way he makes the game easy for everybody else, the opportunities that he'll create, it won't be able to be hidden when you're watching him play. And so I think that's the exciting thing. Yourself, myself, fans from the University of Louisville are, anticipating seeing just his effect on the game just when the ball's in his hands, like the passing that he's going to make, the oohs and ahs. And so, man, it's going to be something special when he checks in, with all 3 of these guys, man, because like I said, they all bring something different. But Ali, just from that cerebral and just from that skill level set that he's going to bring to the game, man, is going to be special when he checks in.
Well, you know what? You hit on something that really matters to me, a couple things. But the first thing is him shooting 31% his last year at BYU is deceiving. And the reason why is, when you think of a guy shooting a great three-point percentage, you think of a guy shooting 38, 35%. Like you think of a Steph Curry, a Klay Thompson, Francisco Garcia, yourself, or Taekwon, right? But 31% is really good in my opinion because as a big guy, he's not taking a ton of them. So I look at that 31% more like 35. You know what I mean? Because he's not taking a ton of attempts a game.
Right.
Now, if he was, so I think he's a guy that can shoot at a higher clip of a 35%. But the other thing you said that really meant is because his passing ability, he makes the court that much bigger to guard. So you have to guard that much more of the court because of him, because you have to respect his three-point ability. You can't sag off in the paint like you would with most big guys because they're rim runners or they're guys that can just post up and finish at the rim or they get to the dunker spot. So for me, I think that's something that people need to understand. He's not going to come out here and take 7 of these a game or 6 of these a game, but he might take 1 to 2 a game, and he might make 1, he might make 2, he might miss 2. But like you said, you have to respect his shooting ability. And, one thing I wanted to mention about Sonata when we were talking about him earlier, I forgot to mention, he plays on the German national team or right under it, and he plays for the team that Dennis Schroeder, who just won the Eurobasket in Germany, played for. So he comes from a good place and a good, I want to say, professional club, over there in Germany, because obviously you have Dennis Schroeder, who's been an NBA player for quite some time, dumping money into that, just like Tony Parker's doing a lot of great things in France, where we've seen the obviously the alien, the young man, that Wembanyama, who plays for the Spurs. So he comes from a pedigree program as well. All these guys do something great, and the dynamic is great, Larry. But the one thing I love about Ali is that 3-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio is something I don't know if we'll ever see from another big guy in a uniform until somebody else decides to do it or Pat Kelsey pulls another rabbit out the hat. But I really am impressed by his passing ability to have a 3-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio as a big guy.
Yeah, and so Ali is probably not as athletic as Big Z and Sananda. And so one thing I think about is, when we play quick guards, in transition, like somebody comes in a drag screen and attacks him. Now he's cerebral and he's smart and he knows how to play it. But he's not, fleet of foot like, the other 2 guys. So, that's definitely something to keep an eye on. But, I think Coach Kelsey and the staff and his teammates, they will definitely have his back and definitely help him out in transition as well. But that's just something to keep an eye on as well when he goes down into the defensive end.
Well, I'll piggyback off of that. One of the things you were a guy that could really defend. You had great feet and you were very physical, but you were also athletic. So all my buddies around here, they used to always joke with me about you. They always said, "Man, Larry was the same size in 6th grade." So
close.
So they said they hated playing against you in football all the time. So I'll say this, like, we all knew Francisco while he was one of our best players or our best player. Like he was like, we had so many great guys, but Francisco was our best player. So because of that, but we knew he wasn't the best defender. So we knew we had to help more when he was guarding the ball versus per se you or per se a Taekwon or Brandon Jenkins who made that great play against West Virginia for us to go to the Final Four. So like in situations with him, you know if you're a Mike Brown or any of the other guys, you know, McNeely or any other guys on the team, you know you're gonna have to be in a different type of coverage when he's in the game versus the other guys because he's not as athletic. And that's something that the guys got to know from a personnel standpoint. You know, like you might not throw one guy the ball on the baseline, but you can throw another guy the ball on the baseline. You know, situations like that is such. So I'd like to bring up some of the guys on the team that won the championship, like Van Treese. Like he could shoot the three. He didn't take a ton of them, but you got to respect him shooting the three, like in the past. Or a guy like Montrez or Shane, those guys are probably going to the basket and try to finish at the rim. And conversely, Shane is smaller than Van Treese. So is Montrez, but athletic. So those guys in pick and roll coverage, you know you can be aggressive and do whatever because those guys can pick you up. Or a VT, like he can move his feet, but he's just not as athletic, but he can still guard. Similar to those things like that, I think, to make it relative for everybody out there, just to give them a heads up on what's going on with that.
And so, man, in final thoughts as we wrap up this episode, I think this year, you add athleticism, you add depth, you add size, you add physicality. You have a guy that, you know, departed that we all wish we could have stayed. James Scott, you know, even Pat Kelsey wish, you know, he could have stayed, but, you know, the NIL opportunities that he was presented, man, he couldn't pass up. But, you know, I think in an instance last year, it was a situation with injuries that he was really truly the only big and the only really live threat, right? And so now this year you bring in three guys that, you know, increase, you know, opportunity, increase size. And now Coach Kelsey doesn't really have to coach with one hand behind his back, right? Because Coach Kelsey likes to play with pace and he likes to force the pace on both ends, likes to get up a lot of threes, but defensively, he likes to create pace in the style in which he likes to play. And so I think in adding depth, adding athleticism this year, especially from a big standpoint where he can get guys in and out, get guys to play the maximum effort, all out, come out of the game, catch your breath, and be ready to go back in. I think you'll see Coach Kelsey get deeper into his coaching bag. I don't think he'll be limited. And I think just for the fans and for the crowd, I think they're really going to be excited with the big men that they see on the court this year. Going to have a lot of dunks, going to have a lot of high percentage shots, man. I think they're going to be, you know, overly satisfied with this roster that the coaching staff has put together as at the center spot.
I think when you look at everything that we have as a collective, I think we'll be fun to watch. Always back in the day, people always want to see the doctors of dunk. They want to see everybody dunking and cutting. Like this right here is the new wave of basketball. When you talk about the court's going to be open, the big guys are going to be outside the 3-point line, sometimes inside the 3-point line. The shooting's going to be tremendous. But the one thing for me, Larry, is like, especially just being a basketball junkie, a lot of the stuff that Coach Kelsey runs is very European-based stuff. And these guys played in European-based systems while blending it in with young American guards. I'm excited about this because I think this is going to be a very dynamic offensive group. I think we should be top 10 in the country in offense. When you look at in terms of like injuries and everything so forth last year that you mentioned, I think it's really unbelievable the coaching job he did and the adjustments he made to finish second in the ACC. That's not talked about enough. It doesn't feel like, what's really wild about all this when you think about Pat Kelsey as a whole? This doesn't feel like year two, but it is. And I had to think about that. I was like, is Pat Kelsey like third year? No, this is year two.
Yeah.
So like to have that much success in year one, coming off the season we had beforehand, and to do what he did now, and then now to be a top 10 team and a potential Final Four contender. I think he really did a great job with recruiting a deeper roster than he did the year before. And so now if the injury bug does bite him, one thing that you got to feel good about as a fan, he can make adjustments. I got to feel good about that because, you know, when Case and Pryor went down, that changed a lot of dynamics because when we went to go watch practice with, and I remember you in the gym that day, and I watched him practice for the first time, I said, that guy's a dude. Like, so now when your guy goes down, how does the team respond? And they responded accordingly. And they went to a second seed in the ACC. Obviously, we didn't finish the way we wanted to in the tournament, but it was year one, Larry. It was year one. This is year two, and we're a top 10 team. You can't be mad at the results. I just can't wait to see Mikal Brown in a Cardinal uniform because that kid, he's going to be fun to watch. And I hope we get the young man up in Cincinnati, up in Newport, to come on home and keep this lineage going of guys that are coming through this program right now, so we can keep this red and black mob rolling down the street right now and fill the Center every night.
P, I couldn't think of a better way to wrap up the podcast and wrap up the episode, man. Appreciate you for being here. Thanks for joining us on the show, brother.
Now, I appreciate it, man. I'm about to get back to this football after I get off of this with you.